Back at it with the 2 Deep podcast here on a Wednesday night. If you catch us via the podcast, we stream live on a Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Central. You can see us on the Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and, of course, the YouTube. We've got a lot to cover tonight as we have reached the playoffs. Damar Hamlin released from the hospital in Buffalo. Is that the fuel the Bills need to, go all the way to the Super Bowl in this win or else season that they've got, or will be it too much emotion for a Buffalo Bills team? We'll talk about that. Skylar Thompson's going to get the call for the Dolphins. No Tua. Is Miami dead in the water? Dak Prescott's thrown 11 picks in his last 7 games, 3 pick sixes this year. See the Achilles heel that'll keep Dallas from moving on again this year. Does Lamar Jackson get in the game against the Bengals? Does he get in a Ravens uniform again this year? How scary are the Chargers for the AFC? Is Aaron Rodgers done in Green Bay? 5 coaching spots. Sean Payton, does he land in one of them? Which one? Which team will surprise? Which team will disappoint in this wild card round? What are we looking for this weekend? It's all coming up next here on the 2 Deep Podcast.
This is the 2 Deep NFL Podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. 2 Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric is the senior VP of Research and Development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. 2 Deep Podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And good evening and welcome here to the 2 Deep Podcast. As you heard, Jeff Chadiha, yep, check. Soren Petro, yep, check. But the hair got a lot better. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of comments in the comment section as Eric Eager still on assignment for Sumer Sports. We welcome in one of the colleagues of one Jeff Chadiha, a guy I see a lot out at Arrowhead Stadium, James Palmer from NFL Network. First of all, James, thanks for joining us. And thanks for really raising our hair game, because there's a lot of grief that gets thrown around at Eager's mad scientist look that he likes to bring to the equation.
Yeah, I dig it. But, Jeff brings no hair to the equation. So, anybody who comes on the program, I think, just raises it in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
From zero. I don't know why you got a hat on, Jeff. I love the look of your hat. I'm not gonna lie.
I have a hat game that gets people going in the comment section. I got to
does
bust
it?
it out every now and then. They wonder when I don't wear it, what's happened. So that's kind of my trademark. Eric's the bad hair guy. I'm the hat guy.
Yeah.
The black
Soren
hat
is
guy.
the what
Yeah.
guy?
The
Just
black
guy?
hat guy.
Yeah, he plays the role of villain quite often. Although,
Oh, I like that.
yeah, Jeff will get the villain role from time to time. But there's no doubt, great hat game. And when Jeff does change it up and go no hat, it's like a massive discussion. And so it's like everyone doesn't know what to do with themselves. So it's good. 2 face guys and a fatty. That's what I'll call this episode of the of the 2 Deep podcast. I got a couple of TV guys that are here. So we do have a lot we want to cover, and we are very appreciative and thankful to have James here. He does a fantastic job for NFL Network. So slumming it with us here on the little screen, right? But let's start with the Bills part of the equation. Jeff, we'll go with you. Give me your thoughts. Hamlin out. Fantastic news for the NFL, for everybody, certainly for his family and his teammates. But, I mean, this is kind of a tricky, emotional one. They had 2 kick returns for a touchdown, so the game certainly appears Buffalo won comfortably. I don't think you can hang your hat on kick returns. Were they a little bit on empty in that game without those kick returns? Do you worry about them being on empty with everything they've been through now?
Well, I've had this conversation on the radio earlier this week about 2 kick returns, how they needed 2 kick returns for touchdowns to win that game. And to me, it's like touchdowns still count no matter how you get them, right? So it's not like it's like a detriment that they scored without having to put their offense on the field twice, which, there's 4 kick returns for touchdowns this year, and they got 2 of them. But, yeah, I think that, look, if you watch that game, you watch the way that week played out, and you followed the NFL over the last 20 years, like you've seen this story before, and there's been plenty of teams that have used emotional lifts to carry them to championships. And I can go back to 2017 with the Philadelphia Eagles, who lose Carson Wentz to a torn up ACL in Week 11.
Jason
and
Peters,
people are like,
everybody,
yeah,
the list went on in
exactly.
that season for them.
Yeah, and so it's like they use that as motivation. Nick Foles took off, and it worked for them. And now you're looking at the Bills. All of a sudden, Micah Hyde's coming back. He's supposed to be done for the year. Jamison Crowder had a broken ankle. Now he's practicing. And you look and you see, well, this is almost the same team now that almost beat the Chiefs in the divisional round last year. And so, yeah, I totally think that what happened on Sunday was a great sign for them. I think they're going to use Damar Hamlin as a huge lift as they go throughout the season. And when you got a guy who's beaten death, you can beat anybody on a football field.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean,
like that, James? Coming out strong.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like you had that tape like right below the camera, and you're like, I'm going to come in hot, man, and I'm going to just drop this right off the start. If you can beat that, you can beat anybody. You sound like Pacino in Any Given Sunday. But like I look at it from sort of two different vantage points, and it's actually funny because it's happening in that locker room from two different sides of understanding. Like there's the resiliency aspect of it that like Leslie Frazier talks about running this defense, and it's kind of like they really are using that as they move forward, and we're going to play for Damar and a lot of the things that Jeff said in terms of how they're going to use this as a positive way as they go through this postseason and just prove how resilient they are over and over again and use this to uplift them. And then there's the other side of it to where everybody in Kansas City knows Mitch Morris. And he said after the game on Sunday, like, we can't just flip a switch and emotionally be okay. Like he said, quote, this is a frazzled locker room. Like, to me, there was no way they were going to lose that game on Sunday. It just was not going to happen. But at the same time, as Jeff kind of put it too, as massive as the Damar Hamlin situation is, it is nothing compared to Carson Wentz or anything another team has tried to rally around. I'm just wondering what the emotional toll is that there's just a letdown at some point to where they just all go like they've just emotionally are spent and it doesn't come together on a Sunday. Like, I feel like that is a very real possibility because the postseason is so long. Like, you're going to have to keep this play for Damar thing going for so long. And I'm not slighting it by any means. I'm just saying the emotional toll that this team has been through, it's unbelievable. And I know we have to commend like Sean Payton for everything. I mean, Sean McDermott, we'll get to Sean Payton eventually, probably point in the show.
Right.
This is one team that's not trying to get him. That Sean McDermott has done with this team is remarkable. And he thought that what I'm getting at was avoided in the game on Sunday, in his opinion, because you have that emotional opening kickoff and it's, wow, how, do you keep that high throughout the game? They did refocus in his mind multiple times throughout the game to where he saw that they just weren't letting emotions carry them through these like ebbs and flows and highs and lows. I'm just wondering how this does play a factor in any other capacity for a team that just has to be mentally exhausted.
Yeah, that's the thing for me is like I do think you can have too much. Like I think you can get on a roll and get his own. Look, history's going to tell us if they win, that was part of the equation. It galvanized an already very good team. In some ways, I won't feel bad, but the Hamlin story is going to be there all the way as long as Buffalo's in there, no matter what, whether they win or lose. If they lose, we'll write the narrative that, this sucked the energy out of the team and it was just too much for them to overcome. And if they win, it'll be part of the magical run, which will be a little bit unfair to some of the guys because this was, Jeff, this is the guy you and I both said was the best team coming down the stretch. We like them as the number one team. So they didn't need a boost of energy, but if they blow everyone's doors off, including Kansas City, I don't think you can say that definitely was fuel in their tank.
I think it's part of the story. I don't think it's the whole story. I mean, it's easy to forget now after everything that's happened over the last, whatever, it's been 10 days now that if Buffalo had beaten Cincinnati and beaten the Patriots, they would be the top seed. And we'd have a different conversation about where they stand and what's about to happen. And
do you think they would have beaten Cincinnati?
I think
we
they
saw
have a chance.
we saw a very small part of that game, and I don't think Buffalo was slowing Cincinnati down one bit.
Yeah, but I mean, like the Chiefs were up 21-3 or 24-3, right, in the AFC Championship game last year and lost. I mean,
True.
so I think Buffalo has found a way. I always tell people this about Buffalo. They've lost 3 games by a total of 8 points. And one was a weird game in Miami. One was a weird game against Minnesota. And then the other one was the Jets, where the Jets got pretty feisty. And so this team didn't stop being good. They just got to a point where people started saying, all right, let's stop exalting them and let's start, picking nits and seeing why they shouldn't win. And so, yeah, Von Miller was a huge loss.
Yeah.
But this is still a team that's got a great quarterback, still a team that's got they're ranked second in the league in offense and defense. Only team in the league who is ranked that high in both statistical categories, and their special team is really good. And so the point I made about Hamlin that I think is relevant, and I go back to when Bob Sanders came back to play for the Colts when they won their championship. I go back to when Ray Lewis was retiring for the Ravens in 2012. I think when you have everybody on your team, I feel like they want to play a role in what happens, and not just looking at Josh Allen to make it happen or Stephon Diggs. That makes you more powerful. And so that's what I saw in that game on Sunday was Nyheim Hines, who we haven't even talked about him all year long, is like, I'm playing a role here. I want to do something. Like Micah Hyde's now, I got to get back on the field. I got to do something. And so they're starting to have that. Every team around this time of year has that look. There's always one team that has that feel about them that they think they can pull it off. The Bucs had that a couple of years ago. I mentioned the Eagles. I think the Bills have that look right now.
Yeah, I think so. James Himes was a move that was like almost like the rich get richer. Like that, they need a third sports car in the garage. They ended up needing him in that game. Like I said, he was the difference in the game. It speaks to their all-in mentality, and we've talked about this all year here on Too Deep. That that they if you look at what they've got moving forward, they don't have a lot of wiggle room. This is their team. Probably. Actually, this minus a couple of guys is going to be their team next year because of where their cap is. They set forth, this is a franchise that's never won the Super Bowl. We know went to 4 in a row and didn't get there. They want to erase that. We talked about that with the Chiefs a couple of years ago. It had been 50 years, similar mindset, like whatever it takes. And they did it. The Bills are coming to the end of Josh Allen's, of even be able to try to keep him cost effective. And they're all in. That mindset plus this kind of experience that maybe does galvanize the team. And every team talks about, my brother over there. Life and death will really make you understand what that means. Here's what I'm curious from you. Do you see any warts that aren't getting talked about? Because one of the things that was being whispered about was Josh Allen was turning the ball over a little bit, right? Like too many turnovers for him. As soon as this story happened, it is the feel-good story of the century. Now, I have no doubt that McDermott and his staff are going through everything and trying to find their problems and fix it. But is there anything that if they don't win, we mentioned the story is going to be that their emotional tank is on empty. But is there some football that's not that good right now for them? Is Von Miller's absence drag them down? Is there anything you'd point to that's pure football that might not be or might be the reason why they might not get all the way there?
Well, I mean, I think – curious what you think. I guess maybe they haven't had a lot of production out of the slot lately. I mean, that's kind of one thing that, it's funny. I did one of their preseason games and it was like, who are we going to play in the slot? We got like 6 options. And now it's like they all play it differently, all different body types. And now it's like, we're not really getting anything out of that spot. But I mean, that's something that can change pretty quickly, honestly. But that's been kind of a minor thing because, but then you're still, even if that's not happening, a defense has to focus on 3 really, really good pass catchers in both receivers and Dawson Knox. So, I mean, it's like, do we just, is it a wart? No, but is it like, would we like that to be better? Yeah. The Von Miller part, I think if there is a moment in the postseason and where we're like, man, a big play in a big, big moment was needed, and that's why we went and got Von Miller, doesn't happen. That sentence is going to come back up repeatedly. I mean, I go back to, I think, Jeff, you were there with me for the Bills-Chiefs game. Yeah. And on 3 occasions, Von ruined the game in the 3 biggest moments of the entire game. And that's why they paid what they did, because you've seen him in the postseason do that. I don't know who on the defense is going to do that or can do that or has that mentality or just DNA to make that happen. Like Chris Jones is that for Kansas City on that side of the ball. Like you may not see him or something for 2 series, and then all of a sudden when you need him, he comes up. That's one spot where I'm just kind of curious because all these games, as Jeff mentioned, the 3 weird losses, every game in the postseason's unbelievably close, and those big moments, I'm not sure who on defense steps up there.
Warts, Jeff, any others?
Well, someone mentioned on the comments, Josh Allen in the red zone. I mean, that's a big one. And he had a big red zone interception against New England. And it was, he got hit on the play, but again, Stephon Diggs was wide open 5 yards in front of him, and he got greedy. And so Josh Allen was playing at a super high level at the end of last season. For the last 5 games, including the playoffs, he was playing the best football of his career. And so he has to be at that level again. For this team to do what I think they can do. And so they can't afford to have those kind of moments where, and I think part of that was earlier in the year, they felt like we can do whatever we want. We're so good offensively and so good defensively.
Yeah, some of those were forced, right? Like you were like, it was almost so overly confident in the red zone.
Exactly. It was greedy. I used that word with, Patrick Mahomes last, on the podcast yesterday about losing the greediness in his game. Josh Allen has to get there too. Because he can make those kind of, and those mistakes will kill you against the Bengals or the Chiefs in the postseason.
I like this one. They haven't played. What did we say? They haven't played a great quarterback in like 5 weeks. Was one of the ones since this one. They haven't played a great quarterback since Miller got hurt. I guess they're talking about Buffalo's opponents, and I'm trying to look like who was the last Bills.
They were playing Tua.
I mean, they did play Tua, but there is, the Patriots twice, the Jets. Jared Goff has played at a very high level this year. I don't think I get the point. He hasn't, it's been a while since they played Patrick Mahomes. There's no Justin Herbert on there of late, right? I get that, but there's no discrediting the Bills. I mean,
the stats and how many great quarterbacks? Yeah, how many great quarterbacks the Chiefs played this year? I mean, let's count Malik Willis and whoever was playing for the Rams in that.
But to that point, Skylar Thompson is going to get the call for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
I mean, they can frankly come emotionally empty on this one and still get away with it, right? This is one, James, that like this took all the fun out of this game. I mean, no offense. I know you're a couple of league guys, but that's really rendered this game commercial filler. Right? Let's fulfill our commercial obligations for these games. It could have been one of the best, and now it's looking pretty rough.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And it's actually, the way you said it, even if there's emotional, this actually might fit the Bills perfectly to where they're set up in this spot for everything I kind of said in the first answer. Because you may be able to obviously have that letdown and still get the win, check yourself, refocus, like regroup in a sense. If that letdown that I was talking to that actually, and I want to say this too, like would be totally understandable, like for the guys in that locker room to have just just an emotional collapse at some point with everything they've been through. I mean, as human beings, it's completely acceptable for that to happen with everything they've been through. It's actually just really set up well for them that this is Jeff kind of like the forum that they're going to walk into. Because it's almost to the point to where it's not even like, we say in the postseason, or regular season, like you can't play down to your opponent and you can't just walk in thinking you're going to like, I don't know. I think you can do that in this game if you're the Bills, just because the talent level is there. And what they're doing and what they've done all week, to my understanding, is just, it was to prepare for Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And that's the set. And then, Raheem's, with the broken thumb, you had to run the ball in this game, right, Jeff? Like you have to run the ball, and that affects you as well. You got injuries on the offensive line. Bradley Chubb hasn't practiced this week to try to get you a big play on defense. Like it's just, you're right. I'm not sure what commercials they're running, Soren, but I don't know.
You're seeing a lot of them.
People are going to be upset actually of what they paid. Probably enough corporations are going to be like, we paid what for these 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Nobody will watch.
Jeff, listen, trust me, it'll still get a higher rating than anything else, not the NFL this week. But Jeff, but shockingly, yet on Twitter, you called the Dolphins a lock. You love the Dolphins in the upset, right? I thought that was bold of you to go out and make that prediction, right?
I said that? Really? I don't remember that.
I thought the last time Jeff tweeted was like 2018.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's my tweet. I think Jim Harbaugh wasn't the coach of Michigan.
Yeah, I think Shula was the coach when you fired him out.
That's right. No, look, it's not going to be a great game, and again, to continue this narrative, sometimes in the postseason, you need to have breaks come your way if you have a hard road to go. I mean, I think back to when the Chiefs got the top seed the year they won the championship, and it was the Miami Dolphins beating New England Patriots on some crazy play that they had nothing to do with. And it opened the door for them to get the bye and get a great opportunity. Bills don't have the bye, but this is almost as good as having a bye where you're facing a third-string quarterback, a team without their top running back. And I think Tyreek Hill is still dealing with an ankle issue. Mm-hmm. And so you're talking about –
there's a lot of guys out of practice today.
Yeah. I mean, so you're talking about – I mean, it's they're walking in with a shell of a team. I've said it all week. Buffalo is not going to lose a home game in the postseason. They will win this week pretty easily. They will get more people healthy, and I think they'll beat the Bengals the next week. Just because this week would be the kind of game where you'd worry about guys getting banged up or a difficult game. This is a lot like the Chiefs playing the Steelers last year in the first round, where it was such a lopsided game going in, and it was interesting for about 5 minutes. And then the Chiefs just open up the whoop.
It was like Juju's going to play. It came out the night before.
Right. TJ Watt sliding into the end zone and feeling like, oh, here comes the upset. Yeah. And next thing you know, 40 points later, it's
everybody remember
Ben Roethlisberger's retiring.
Yeah.
This is the largest spread at 13 points since last year when the Chiefs were 12.5-point favorites for the Steelers. It's like the only other like double-digit wild card round spread. Those are going to become more pronounced now that the 2 seed is going to be sitting in this round. But last year we saw it. I mean, this is kind of the game that you're going to get in this situation. I think what's interesting too is the Dolphins are all in on now. Like they're out of draft picks for a little while. Their cap is tapped out. I mean, this is the squad. They're going to be running this same thing back, maybe minus a couple of guys as well. So they're another team that put a lot into being all in this year. Dak has been a favorite subject of yours, Jeff, of mine. I got criticized early on when I said, good quarterback, not worth the money. Go win some games late. Go win some playoff games. This is a Bucs team. Yeah, it's Tom Brady. This ain't vintage Tom Brady. This ain't the Bucs team from 2 years ago. How much pressure is on Dak Prescott to play at a high level and get it done this year?
Well, you wouldn't have thought they would be that high given what he has around him and given what this team was when he came back to it. But, I mean, the way he's playing, it's baffling. Mm-hmm. It goes beyond – last year Mahomes had that run in the first half when he was throwing a lot of interceptions, but he was just forcing the football and he got out of it. Like this feels like Dak Prescott's not seeing the field very well. And you go back to that 2-play situation where he almost threw a pick six to Kendall Fuller and it came back through the same pass in the same part of the field and got it picked again for a touchdown. 14 for 37 in a game that you didn't really need that much is not a great way to go in the playoffs, especially the way things went last year for them. And I've said it before, given what he makes, given how Jerry Jones feels about him, given who the coordinator is, Kellen Moore, they often play as if, and James can appreciate this, they play a lot like the Broncos do with Russell Wilson, where they think he can do a lot more than he actually can, and they put him in positions to make the kind of mistakes he makes. If they rely more on Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott and a more conservative offense, they're fine. But if he's going to be slinging it 40 times and trying to make big plays in tough situations with aggressive play calling, they could lose that game easily.
The thing that goes with not seeing it, Jeff, that you keep hearing and you keep seeing is that he's pressing, right? And that he's almost pressing in a sense while he's not seeing it. And he's almost – I look into the scenario he's walking into now. It's like, all right, I'm not seeing the game real well right now. I'm kind of pressing and forcing some balls. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go play Tom Brady in Tampa. Like, that'll get me to stop pressing. Like, that doesn't bode well for him in Dallas. Like, it doesn't set it up to take a breath and a beat and relax in a sense. I completely agree with Jeff because it's kind of like, he doesn't trust some of the things that are out there along with not seeing them. It's like, I know CD's going to do it, but I'm not trusting a lot of what else is out there. And the other part that everybody keeps calling on is like, run the ball, like run it, like run the ball. And so the funny part about this is I was talking to a couple of buddies in the Dallas organization I know like 4 or 5 weeks ago. And they were like, the last thing we want is to go to Tampa in the first round. That would just be the worst. And now that's exactly what's happened. And so I just think it's going to be fascinating to watch this for a few things. Like, man, was Kellen Moore hot going into the coaching cycle a year ago? Not as hot coming into the coaching cycle this year. And the other part of it is Jerry, asked this week about, if they, you don't come and get the win here, is McCarthy's job on the line? He like screaming no, essentially screaming no. Don't ask me the question. I don't really want to think about it, because that's going to be a fascinating turn of events that could happen if they lose this game. Soren, like on Monday night, the last game of the week, and he knows Dan Quinn is being highly coveted out of his building, and I think we all know, right, Jeff, like what Quinn has done in that building in terms of culture, in terms of what he's done with the guys on his side of the ball. Oof, it might be an interesting little thought process going through Jerry's mind.
Well,
quarterback. So
yeah, and we talk about it, not that much really, but it's always because we know it's there. Jerry Jones goes on a radio show every single week in Dallas. He meets with the media after every single game. He critiques his quarterback and his coach, even when he's in his mind, I think. And I've sat up at Arrowhead when the Cowboys were in last year and been by the waiters that are headed to Jerry's suite. And, Jerry enjoys the game. I'll say that. And then afterwards, it's down to a big press conference. And I think he thinks he's like providing cover fire for his coach and his quarterback, but just always hearing your owner talk about your job and defending like they're, like no one would have to defend him if you weren't there to answer the questions, right? Clark Hunt's never had to defend his coach because he doesn't take those questions. You see him at, training camp and he talks about how great it is to be in St. Joe, Missouri, or, and Jerry just shines that spotlight so brightly on his coach and his quarterback. It is going to be amazing. And it is going to be an absolute circus one way or the other. Either Tom Brady loses and everybody wonders, are you done? Are you peacing out? Adam Hill in Las Vegas covers the Raiders for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, says Tom Brady plays football next year is for the Raiders or no one else. And he had that story 3 years ago, was laughed at before he went down to Tampa, and everybody said that's a joke. And then Rob Gronkowski comes out and says, oh yeah, we talked to him. He confirms everything that Adam had. Adam's saying that they're going to be chasing him this time. So I listen.
I could see him playing somewhere else other than just Vegas, right, Jeff? I mean, it's not Vegas or bust.
I think the Jets make a ton of sense. I could easily see him.
I think San Fran
get paid $20 million.
San Fran makes sense if he can financially make that work. I mean, I guess he could take hardly anything if he wants. But
what's he making this year? Like $20 million, $25 million? He's not making that much money.
I listen.
He's never been up near the top.
Yeah, it's either way. That game, whoever loses,
alimony now.
Whoever
That's
loses,
a good point, man. Better get back to doing them UGG ads in Sports Illustrated. Those print UGG ads better start paying some more bills.
It is the 2D podcast, proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, covering the entire KC metro area. Gann Asphalt Concrete, nationally recognized full-service pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in KC since 1994. Gann Asphalt Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. Let's talk about Lamar Jackson. I think this one is intriguing, Jeff. I listen, I have no inside information. Maybe you do, James. Maybe you do. You guys talk to more people than I do. When you connect dots, like this does not seem like an injury that he should still be out from. Right now, I don't know the health. I'm not a doctor, but he keeps being out. He keeps being out. The way John Harbaugh answers questions reminds me of Andy Reid answering questions about Eric Berry a number of years ago, where he kept being out and out and out. The contract's looming out there. He didn't practice on Wednesday. Do we see him in this game? Do we see him in a Ravens uniform again?
I'm not confident. I mean, I feel like at some point,
Which
if you're
one?
not, both. I'll say I'll take the first. I don't think he's going to play. I think they'll franchise him and he'll be there next year. And this whole contract thing will get drawn out for another 12, 15 months. But yeah, I just feel like you look at what happened with the Dolphins, and yeah, it was a different situation with a concussion. They pretty much said, hey, he's not practicing today. Tua's not practicing today. He's done. We're sitting him down. I just feel like at some point the Ravens were playing a lot of meaningful games and had a chance to catch the Bengals for the divisional championship, and he had zero interest in being on the field. And I don't want to – this guy plays for his team. He plays hard. I don't want to suggest that he's not into, doing what's best for the team. But that contract does hang out there. And I find it hard to believe he's not sitting there watching the way this offense is performed, which is basically like scoring a touchdown to them is like climbing Mount Everest right now. It's just – I'm sure he's feeling like this is every time this offense goes out there without me, I'm making money. And so at some point, he's got to be practicing for me to feel good about him playing. If that doesn't happen tomorrow, he's not playing in this game. I don't see it happening.
James, what do you think happens in this game in his career?
Yeah, I don't know how you could say he's going to play in this game when he's missed. This would be 6. Would this be 6 games?
Yeah.
And we haven't seen him on the practice field. He's not going to play in this game. What kind of my understanding is with this injury and what he's dealing with, I'm curious if he was, and we just got off talking about him, so I'll just use him as an example. If he was a Brady-style quarterback, could he be playing right now? Probably. You can hide this injury with a drop-back quarterback type of player, taking stuff from the gun, and your ball's out of your hands quick. And Jeff knows the whole drill about all the ways you could work around it within your offense. The problem is that's not their offense. Like it's just not designed to do that. I mean, his legs are a massive weapon, yes, but at the same time, that's how the offense is designed. So I think that's playing a pretty good part in why we haven't seen him is the style of play. And Jeff's not wrong by this is probably helping him. While this offense is going out there without him. I don't think anybody doubts if you know Lamar, if you've seen him after losses, like in a locker room alone, like winning a championship matters a lot to him. I don't think he's just sitting there twiddling his thumbs going, man, this is going to make me some green. Like that's not how he's wired. Now, is it helping him? Probably, yeah. But I do think he's probably there, considering everything is designed for him. If you change, I mean, you'd have to find a quarterback with a similar skill set, honestly, or else you're changing a lot of what you do.
Let me ask you this: 5 years, next 5 years, how many games does Lamar Jackson play?
Oh, I mean, that's a lot of math, man. Eric's not here for me to do that kind of. That's 17.
Yeah, I was told I should have brought a calculator.
85,
I wasn't
85
prepared.
possible games. Yeah, I'd say he probably plays in 70, 75.
Okay, I mean, yeah, 85 possible games. My point. Yeah, I mean, James, I'm happy to. What do you think? How much time do you think he's going to miss? Because that's the real trick here, right?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's the same thing as, I mean, we didn't really get into it, but it's the same thing as with Tua. I mean, Tua's going into his offseason
exactly where I was
now,
going. Yeah.
whether they're going to pick up the fifth-year option or not with him. And from speaking to experts, I'm no concussion expert or try to play one on a podcast, apparently. But, like, I don't think he's considered concussion prone. I think the experts believe that these are 3 that are tied somewhat together, if that makes sense. The first one going more or less misdiagnosed, which leads heavily into the second, which the second with the 2 back-to-back leads you into a prolonged period of chances of a third. And so with the amount of rest that you can get, maybe you're not considered concussion prone. But the point of it, all that is, the money that these quarterbacks are making, the investment needs to be sound, and it needs to be with the mindset of how available is this player going to be. And I think that's going to be the consideration with both of them. Now, I do think they're different when Lamar has won an MVP and has been right there. But the style of play probably plays into a lot of people's minds. And so I do think it is a situation I don't envy for either ownership group to be in, because you could look like a fool by really not even making the wrong decision.
Right.
Well, go ahead, Sam. Well, I was just going to say, and I've talked to personnel people who earlier in the year were saying that Lamar's chance to make the kind of money he wanted to make really came down to how this team performed in the playoffs. If they went on a deep run in the playoffs, that's where you prove yourself as the kind of quarterback who can command that kind of money. And yeah, the MVP is great and the stats are great and the highlights are great. When you're talking about the kind of money he wants to have, to go from where he was being offered, which was somewhere in the $180, $200 million range, to where Deshaun Watson is, which is still outlier money. Like, you got to go above and beyond that. And so if you're not doing that in the playoffs, at some point he's got to understand, okay, this is the best deal I can get. For what Soren just said, I might not be playing in 5 years. And so at some point that logic has got to enter the conversation for him.
I might be guilty of rooting for my prediction, right? Which is one of the things we talk about, like, oh, that guy's not, did you say he's not any good? So now you're trying to work backwards and find a reason why he's not. So I will put that out there. And if somebody wants to say, well, you're not giving him a fair shake, I think I am. I said a guy who runs that much, play him during his rookie contract, right? Pitch backwards, be the run team that does it differently. You can throw a franchise tag on him once or twice, but don't tie up to where you're got a 3-year albatross on him. You eject. If I can look at it that way, the Ravens had to have at least considered that option. And I think now, if he doesn't, I think the other aspect of it is, what would he bring in a trade? Right? Like there's a debate, Fields, who won 3 games, versus Bryce Young. Which one should the Bears go with? He won 3 games in his second year, right? Yes, he ran all over the place, but here's Young. So what quarterback, is there really a draftable quarterback option that you feel stronger about than Lamar Jackson? So I think there will be a market for Lamar Jackson out there, much more than there'll be a market for Fields. I mean, that's what makes it intriguing. James,
well, I'm looking at some of the quarterbacks that played in the NFL this season. Of course, yes, there'd be a market for Lamar. If we're talking about durability and we're talking about availability, I think Bryce Young's weigh-in, Jeff, while we're at the combine, might be like the biggest weigh-in in terms of anticipation we've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been down to Tuscaloosa. I've hung out with him, watched him throw, shorts and a T-shirt. He's built like Allen Iverson. Like it's 180 pounds, shade under 6 feet. Like that's terrifying to me as ownership, because I mean, the guy's an incredible football player. To put it not PC at all, like, look, Kyler Murray's got an ass on him. Like, Russell Wilson from the waist down is built like a tree. Like, those guys are short, but they're thick. That is not Bryce Young. So there's definitely, it would be Bears luck. You trade Fields, get Bryce Young, and you had a guy that ran over everybody physically for a year, and you draft the guy who physically gets sacked twice, and it's like, oh boy, this is gonna be tough. I was curious. I was raising my attitude. Like, the guy who's going to come into this, who's already in negotiations right now with his team and was an MVP candidate today, which people in Kansas City don't want to hear, is how do you evaluate Jalen Hurts then?
Yeah.
How do you evaluate the long-term aspect of Jalen Hurts? Like, this is a style of play in the NFL that obviously is not solo to Lamar Jackson. And we're going to have to watch several examples of it play out. Well,
there are 4 unique situations now with Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, and Kyler Murray. You look at the organizations and say, is it smart to keep going down the road with these guys? I mean, Hurts to me is the safest bet there, because
I think so too.
And I think he'll be the most sensible guy when it comes to negotiating a contract. But yeah, I think someone put it out there, and I mentioned it, before we got on the air about, if I'm Ryan Pace, I'd call the Ravens and say, hey, you want Justin Fields? Are you interested? Yeah. If I'm the Arizona Cardinals, maybe I'd call the Ravens and say, hey, you want Kyler Murray?
Oh,
Does this interest you? I mean, it's because of the skill set and the need on the offense. It is very hard to change.
Oh, it'd be a complete overhaul. It'd be a complete change. And it's not just from the quarterback spot, right, Jeff? Like, Mark Andrews runs only certain routes because of the way the offense is designed. I mean, there's a lot that you would have to flip.
We talked a lot about Josh Allen and the pounding he takes. He's obviously the biggest of the bunch that we're talking about, the most Cam Newton-esque. And I'll quote Eric Eager, who said Cam Newton was never hurt until he got hurt, and he stayed hurt ever since. And so I think there's a shelf life. I'm kind of surprised Philly, since once Jalen Hurts showed that he could spin it, like back off a little bit. Like, Patrick Mahomes runs, but he runs on okay, I'm flushed out of the pocket, I'm in the wide open, I'm going to get down. They're still running Hurts, and they really run out, although they back off a little bit with hey, we expect you to run over some guys and get to the sticks. And I don't get it. Once the guy shows he can throw it, you start teaching him to get down. And we haven't seen a lot of that. Tell me this, are the Chargers scary to the rest of the AFC now with what they are? They've got, who knows what Williams' shape is going to be when he gets going. But should the Chargers scare anyone? I mean, right now all the conversation is Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, Bengals, Chiefs, Bills, Chiefs, Bills, Bengals. Some order of those three. Should any of those three be scared of the Chargers?
Yeah. I mean, they're the fourth. To me, they're the fourth best team in the AFC, and they are the fourth best team by a record, obviously. But they're getting healthier, and I expect Mike Williams to play in that game, even though he didn't practice with that back contusion. Joey Bosa, people were making a big deal about his groin. He's practicing. Their defense is healthy again. I think Bryce Callahan is the only guy who, I think he was sick or had some kind of food poisoning thing. So, and they're getting Rashawn Slater back. I mean, he's the guy in that 21-day window now to start practicing. So they're getting back to full strength. And I know, as much as people in Kansas City talk about charging, and his team will blow it, they play the Chiefs tough all the time. And if they get into a divisional round matchup with the Chiefs, if they beat Jacksonville and get to the divisional round, that's probably going to be a 50-50 game. And it's just because they are not afraid to play here. They've won games in Kansas City, and they feel like they've had opportunities to beat the Chiefs. So the thing, just like the Bengals came in here last year, that's a team that won't come in here scared. And I think they're also a team that's playing with the idea of, yeah, we missed some opportunities to do some big things because of health and some ineptitude at times, but it's a second season now, and we're at full strength, and we can probably make some noise if we play to our strengths.
James, is Chargers going to Charger something that exists everywhere, or just in AFC West land?
No, that's everywhere, man. That's everywhere. I've seen so many drives at the end of a game lead to a field goal off the upright and a loss at games I've been in many stadiums with the Chargers outside of the AFC West. New Orleans rings a bell 2 years ago where they did it there. And it seems to happen. And we were all wondering it, in the finale against Denver, when everybody's just, I'm sitting at, I'm at Eagles Giants, and everybody, the whole press box is like, what is Brandon Staley doing? Yeah. Like, people are pouring their hair out and don't even care in Philly. They're just, it was lit. Listen, it's the New York media and the Philly media. So when you sit in a press box with them, they got to make sure everybody hears what they're thinking. So they're all just yelling to each other, like, about what they think of Brandon Staley. And to Jeff's point, I look at two position groups that they need to be healthy at, then they haven't been, and transforms this entire team. And that's if they have both receivers on the field at the same time, which only happened for 8 games this season, in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. And Keenan Allen didn't play in that game against the Jags in week 3. And if Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are both healthy, and we know Bosa missed 12 games. And so I know Khalil Mack's not the player he once was, but if you have to scheme for Joey Bosa on the other side, it sure helps Khalil Mack's life and what he's able to do in a game and what he is able to do, we've seen in big moments in the past. And then when you have both those receivers, obviously they're very, very good receivers and talented and physical receivers. It just makes life even easier for the guy that just gets no love in the entire NFL, and Austin Eckler, who leads the league in touchdowns and nobody seems to care over and over again, that he can work the middle of the field, and those option routes that he runs with Justin Herbert just keep getting better the more time that they have together, where they find favorable matchups for him to be in. I think Mike Williams is going to play, Jeff, but like, this game's Saturday. I mean, this isn't a Sunday game, and we have a no practice again on Thursday. But it was a contusion. It was not a muscle or bone issue. But like that, to me, if those guys are all healthy and playing well, and Rashawn Slater is a huge part of it, of what Jeff mentioned. That's a great point. but they're a scary team if that's the case.
Yeah, no doubt. They scare people in Kansas City. I can tell you that. Even though Kansas City usually wins, they scare Kansas City for sure. Aaron Rodgers, is he done? Is he done with the Packers? What's your crystal ball tell you on where Aaron Rodgers goes, Jeff?
I think he's playing football in Green Bay next year. Aaron Rodgers, and known him a long time. I like the guy a lot. I think he's a drama queen. And this time of year is time for the drama to start. It's the off season. It's time for Aaron Rodgers drama season to start. I thought they were going to win that game first and foremost. I was surprised the Lions showed up and did what they did. But I think I think at some point he's got to recognize the role he's played and where they are. And if you're going to make that kind of money and make the kind of claims about ownership he made a couple of years ago, and you're not going to go work out with receivers in the offseason, which Patrick Mahomes did with his receivers, and a lot of quarterbacks do with their receivers every year. If you're if you're going to complain about guys dropping passes and running the wrong routes, and he struggled to be the leader he needs to be for that team. And he's going to make a lot of money. I don't see him walking away from $60 million. But I think that team is now going to be looking up at the Detroit Lions for this foreseeable future. And I think they're going to be looking up at the Minnesota Vikings for the foreseeable future. And if they're not careful, the Chicago Bears could turn a first-round pick and a whole bunch of cap space into a nice spot above them too. So that kind of stuff might make him rethink wanting to play. I never thought he was going to be somebody who would do what Tom Brady did anyway. I think he's got other interests that he's proven to have outside of football. But I think that he'll at least – what's that?
What are they?
What are they? Well, going down to South America and smoking, all kinds of strange substances to deal with his psyche and his body. I mean, that's one of them.
All right.
Called
Ricky
solving COVID. That was on his list.
Yeah, he likes Jeopardy. That's something he's into. So, but yeah, I think he'll take the money. I don't see him walking away from that kind of money right now.
Yeah.
I also look at it, Jeff, from the stance of how did guys like Christian Watson get better as the season went on? And you're like, oh, okay, now we can start the year like this. Like we can start the year with some of this clicking a little better than we thought it was going to. I agree with Jeff. I'll make this quick because there's not much more to add on it than what he didn't cover. It's I don't see him playing anywhere else. I do think there is going to be a very interesting situation where I've talked to guys that have been in Green Bay for a number of years, other people around the league, and they're all like, Aaron's still playing great, but man, they got to give Jordan Love a shot, to spin it. Yeah. And you might miss that window entirely. And then Aaron hangs it up, and then where are you? It's a really weird spot that they're in, because I was at that game in Philly where Aaron turned the ball over a couple of times early. He ends up, getting hitting the ribs or whatever it was and leaves. And Jordan Love comes in there and just bomb, and marches them down the field. And he's playing great. And then it's Aaron's back in the game the next week. We don't see Jordan Love again. So it is a weird spot they're in. I don't think he plays anywhere else, but I do think he plays next year as well. I do.
Listen, maybe there's something. I spent a lot of time staring at caps and contracts and the over the cap and the SPO track and the breakdowns on it. But he's
going to make a ton of money.
There's a dead cap. Well, here's what's kind of interesting. There's a dead cap hit of $100 million if he's not there next year. So I don't know how the Packers could cut or trade him. Right. So that's not happening. And so then it comes down to, does he retire? You can prorate that. That's 50 each way. I don't know if I can't remember if there's some special circumstance on retirement, kicking something out, but he got $40 million in a signing bonus. He'd have to pay back $15 million. The one thing though, is he's only due $15 million in real cash next year. Right. It's then some more, there's a $30 million option bonus in addition to a base salary of $2 million. And so he gets to $32 million the following year. And, it is a little bit, it's one of the trickier contracts to kind of make your way through, but I think this is a lot of dig me, give me some attention. Cause I think this was at least a 2-year deal when he signed it. So I think it's kind of a lot to do about nothing. 5 coaching jobs open right now. Sean Payton's name being bandied about everywhere. Compensation would have to be given to New Orleans. Jeff, are we going to finally get a landing spot for Sean Payton? And do you have one that you'd make the favorite?
I think just today, the place that makes the most sense is Denver, because they actually have a quarterback who I think can still play at a decent level. Maybe not a great level, but I think he is the most established, safest option. Nobody else really has a quarterback you like right now. I mean, Arizona's quarterback is hurt. Indianapolis doesn't have a quarterback. Carolina doesn't have one. Houston doesn't have one. Big question. I mean, think about Denver. What do you have to trade?
You do have a one. You got a one. You got a one.
I think it'll take more than that. I mean, I think if you're New Orleans, you're thinking, I got 5 teams out here who want to talk to this guy. Now, the Rams, if McVay leaves, that could be interesting, depending on
what do they have to trade?
Yeah, it's a good question. Even less. And then there's the Cowboys. I mean, that's the elephant in the room, right? It depends. I think he sits around and waits to see what happens with Mike McCarthy. And if Mike McCarthy lays a big fat egg against Tampa Bay, even if they lose in the divisional round and it's an ugly loss, I could easily see Jerry Jones saying, okay, it's time to get Sean Payton in here, get Kellen Moore out of here, get Dan Quinn can leave. It's McCarthy's gone. Let's go. Sean Payton, your show. Let's roll.
James, when he was coaching in New Orleans, he was still living in Dallas. That's an obvious connection there. Everybody wanted to send him to the Chargers. What if the Chargers lay an egg? Does the idea of being able to coach Justin Herbert? The thing I don't get about the Broncos, why do you want to play Herbert and Mahomes twice? Isn't the NFC South, get out there, find your quarterback. The NFC South is a barren wasteland. Like, if you want to win, and guys like Sean Payton aren't thinking about the 4-year plan. He's ready to turn around and win right now. Like, put yourself in his shoes. What's he thinking?
Well, I mean, I think the allure, you mentioned what is the allure of Denver. I think the allure is, I think they lost like 9 games by 1 score. I mean, that could be a real quick turnaround with the defense they have and the injuries that they sustain. I mean, I think they had more money on IR than any other team in football, with all the injuries, and most of them are on the offensive side of the ball. So I think a quick turnaround could be possible there. And I'm not sure if I've ever met a head coach that doesn't think he's the one that would fix the quarterback at any level, maybe. But there is this. I was like kind of looking through Twitter. My boy Nick Underhill, who that looks wild on the screen, who covers the Saints, and actually when Sean was there was probably Sean's favorite reporter covering the Saints, just kind of tweeted out less than an hour ago, I'm willing to say all 5 teams with coaching openings have called Sean Payton and 3 have passed thus far. So my thought on Sean Payton is we aren't remembering what the setup was in New Orleans, which was he had the power. Him and Mickey Loomis had a very, very good relationship in the way they operated, but Sean had the power. To me, if you go to Arizona, where they've cleaned house with their general manager and head coach, and a lot of stuff's been going around before today, and it got kind of exposed a little bit more today, of his feelings for Kyler Murray, that he likes Kyler Murray, and he can go in there and pick his GM, Jeff, as he would be. That's a setup that I think Sean Payton would really like. And it's one that, he gets the things that he covets as well in the road to success. I know everybody also was going like, well, what if him and Brady are looking to pair up somewhere? I just think I'm curious what those options are. I mean, there was one with the Saints at the start of the offseason that he comes back to the Saints and Brady goes there. I just don't see that happening.
No.
That kind of thought process has been out there, but I just don't see it happening. I find Arizona to be probably the spot in my head that I would think he goes to, because I think I'm sorry, it plays in his favor, Jeff. Everything that went down over the last year plus in Arizona plays in Sean's favor, as dysfunctional as it was.
No.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, surprise, disappointment. What happens this weekend that's either surprising? Who can surprise? Who disappoints? Jeff, you got any things you're expecting to fill that bill?
Well, I picked the Jaguars to lose. I know they're not favored in the game, but I don't think – I'm concerned about – and some people tell you that playoff experience is overrated. I'm not one of those people. You heard Doug Peterson talking this week about telling these guys, like, make sure you're handling your business during the week. Like, choices you make, they're going to affect this game. I just have a feeling, and the Chargers obviously haven't been in the playoffs in a while, but they have a lot of players like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Joey Bosa, the guys who've been in playoff situations. I just feel like the Jaguars, it's been a great run. They've beaten one team with a winning record in this win streak they've had over the last 5 games. I think they come back to earth and they get beaten by the Chargers.
You want to look at the list of that 5-game win streak, the quarterbacks that they played?
Oh, I know. Go rattle them off if you want.
I want to hear you rattle them off. Yeah, I want to hear you rattle them off.
I know Malik Willis was was it Malik? Well, Josh Dobbs. It was Josh Dobbs.
No,
twice.
Josh Dobbs is on that list.
Taylor Heineke.
Yeah.
Dak when he just threw the pick 6, and then is it Justin Fields didn't play in that game, right? It was Chicago.
Zach Wilson with the Jets was one of them, right?
Was it Zach Wilson?
Yeah, we're just rattling off a murderer's row here of quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, they've had like 15 turnovers in their last 15 turnovers in their last 5 games.
But to their credit, the scores have been 36-22. The Cowboys was 40-34. Jets was 19-3. Texans was 31-3. And the Titans were 20-16. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs were in overtime with the Texans. And we're not bailing on that. So I'll give you a surprise. I give the Jaguars as the surprise. I think the Jaguars are going to do it. I think if anybody looks like the Bengals, it's them. And why not the Chargers are going to Charger? You know, listen, Kevin said it right here. You know, Chargers going to Charger, man.
Chargers going to Charger. All right, Kev. All right, Kev. Yeah. I will say this. If we talk about postseason experience, we do know Trevor Lawrence has played in massive games. And as I know the NFL is a different deal. But I don't think the stage is going to be too big for Trevor Lawrence personally at all. I do think that doesn't really play in a factor for him. I just think that defensively they ask their guys to do a lot and maybe too much in what the some of those guys can comprehend and do. But I think they're an awesome story this season for the direction that Doug Peterson's put them in. I don't know. A surprise. I don't know. I mean, like, I don't think Seattle really has a shot with the way the Niners are playing. We know the Dolphins don't. Jeff and I said, I think this was before the show started. We both think the Giants are. Listen, there are people in the Giants building that are like, we have no idea how we won this many games. Yeah. So I mean, like, they literally will say that. Yeah, they're just very pumped. Another good, like, you know, heading in the right direction situation. I think a surprise would be, and this would be telling for the AFC postseason, is if Cincinnati struggles offensively. That would be something to watch moving forward. I mean, you're without the right side of your offensive line for this game, possibly the entire playoffs, depending on how Alex Kappa's ankle comes around. That could be telling for their chances for heading back to the Super Bowl. That's one thing that I would be. It's not surprising, but it's one thing I would definitely watch for on how they play offensively against a good Ravens defense. But this might be something they're going to have to deal with, and we know how much Burrow got hit, last year.
The Vikings, I think, are the disappointment. I mean, like, and that's not even there. Like, you can kind of see the tea leaves. I mean, they had a negative point differential. So how shocking is it if the record says that they ought to be steamrolling it, but their point differential says that they're in trouble against anybody they play in the postseason. So
it's like 3 games though. 3 blowout losses killed their point. It's like 41 to Green Bay, 40 to Dallas, and a 24-7 loss to the Eagles. Like, just railed their point differential.
Listen,
I'll be honest. I did that Eagles game, and I'll tell you one thing: that Eagles team was not worried about the Vikings one bit. Yeah. I mean, I've never seen a more confident team in my life. God.
All right, what are you looking for this weekend? You got one thing you're zeroing in on, Jeff, that you can't wait to watch?
James mentioned it, I think, with the Bengals game. I am interested to see how their offensive line fares. My only concern about the Bengals in the postseason is that they've got some injuries at some key positions that when it was Chidobe Awuzie, their best corner went down. It was okay. They managed, Sam Hubbard's been beaten up at the end, but you're talking about your right side of your offensive line against the Ravens.
Inside the wrist. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they've got some stuff happening at some big positions. I don't think it will cost them a game against the Ravens, but I'm curious to see if they look bad, if they look less than what they've been. They've been the best team in the AFC the last 8 or 9 weeks. And if that hurts them, I could see Buffalo taking the next week.
Completely strange stat, by the way. The last team to lose a Super Bowl and then have a win streak as long as the Bengals have heading into the next year's postseason, which theirs is 8. The other one is the 72 Dolphins, who were riding a undefeated streak into the postseason. No, my thing I want to watch is I did the game Thursday night in Seattle between the Niners and Seattle late in the season. And I got some really interesting comments from that Niners locker room after they won the NFC West in that game, specifically from Drake Jackson, where he told me the way we play violently on the defensive side of the ball, we could tell Geno was shaking before the game even started. Wild comment to say on the record, but now you got a third time to go and play him. But I will say this, Geno has looked terrible against that defense in both those games that he played this year. That defense is a fun group to watch, and Brock Purdy's been obviously a blast to watch. And now that you have that group of skill guys around him, again, we're on in Kansas City. This is probably blasphemy. It's probably the best group of skill guys in the league around a quarterback. I mean, it's now that Debo's back and Elijah Mitchell's back and Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and Juszczyk's used all over the field. It's just fun football to watch. And I just want to see if Geno's shaking pregame. That's my that's what I want to see out there. Apparently,
yeah. I want to see if Jerry Jones is shaking postgame. Right? Like he can say whatever he wants.
You want that press conference, Soren. You've talked about that press conference. Like you really love it. You described what he does before it, how he gets down there, how he prepares for it.
If there's a game that like I can't wait to hear what they have to say after it, no matter what happens, it's Cowboys Bucs. I mean, I think the league is smart. That's why that game got put to the Monday night slot. I mean, I think it's going to be must see TV, and I think the post game and everything we hear after it is going to be fantastic as well. And so, I think that's a good one. But I think it's also it's like the only theater those two teams will have, because whatever they do after this, they're done. They're out. So like enjoy the moment in the spotlight and then take your beating and go home. I think that's what's coming here. But I think, listen, even if we get blowouts, like I said, I don't care how bad the Dolphins-Bills game is. It'll be the highest rated thing on television this weekend with anything except other NFL games. Right?
But imagine if, and I have no knowledge of this. Peter Schrager just tweeted it out this morning. Like if Damar Hamlin makes it to that game, like even if he's in a suite or whatever, I'm not saying he's going to lead him onto the field, but like I'm concerned for the well-being of everyone in that stadium if he gets put up on the big screen and he's like there. The Dolphins might just want to just like leave.
I mean, Soren went to school in Western New York. He knows what that crowd is like. I'm telling you, Bills Mafia, Buffalo, that stadium for the next 2 weeks is going to be insane.
I believe that game is at noon, partially for the well-being of the fans. Because how many broke
be a table left in
how many broken hips? Fractured vertebrae would they be carting people off to if that game went at 7 o'clock?
Physical therapists putting cards in windshields.
Chiropractors making a killing on Monday.
They'd be at their all-time best. There's no doubt. All right. Hey, James, we want to thank you a lot, man. It was great. A lot of fun.
I loved it, guys. Yeah. I see you both all the time.
Thanks for phoning in. We appreciate it, man. You're the best. We appreciate
it.
James Palmer, NFL Network, Jeff Chadiha from NFL Network. My name is Soren Petro. Of course, remember, our great friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call them at 816-484-3338. Tell them you heard about it on the 2 Deep podcast. Until next time, for Jeff, for Eric, who's not here, and for James, for filling in. My name is Soren Petro. Thanks for joining us here on the 2 Deep podcast.